Hi everyone, Therese here. The word of the day is disappointment. I thought we could talk about the energy of disappointment, why we have to experience it. So here's my take on it. I feel that the energy of disappointment serves as a recalibration. It helps us to recalibrate. It helps us to readjust our focus and maybe help us see things in a new light. Perhaps what we are disappointed, if especially like let's say it's an outcome we're disappointed in, it helps us to reframe it or see it in a light that perhaps we weren't seeing it in because we had a preconceived idea about how that was going to affect us, right? We presuppose and assume a lot about future events that haven't happened. We give future events certain weight and meaning, thinking that it's going to give me this feeling, right? And we focus on the event or the outcome rather than focusing on the feeling, which is what, if you're working with manifesting, if you're working on manifesting, you know that you need to focus in on the feeling. Let's talk about some examples of disappointment around an outcome, right? Thinking that outcome is going to lead to something, and then we get it and we're like, meh. I feel that happens a lot, right? Spark creativity, yes. You can use disappointment to get creative. That's a very positive way to take the energy of disappointment and transmute it. I'm thinking about like, when I complete this thing, when I hit this goal, when I get this relationship, or I hit this mile marker, or I make this much money, I'm going to feel this way, right? That's what we presuppose or we assume about an outcome. And then when it comes to pass and we actually experience it, we find out that that feeling isn't attached to those outcomes. And you might actually hit the outcome and not feel what you thought you'd feel, which is disappointing, right? Or the other forms that there's a lot of forms that disappointment can take, obviously, but another form in that particular circumstances, you could be going for an outcome, really putting everything you got into it, believing that you're going to feel a certain way once you get it, and then the outcome doesn't happen at all. You don't get it. And so you don't have the feeling and you don't have the outcome, but unfortunately in that scenario, you still could be tying outcome and feeling together. At least with the other one, when you get what you think is going to happen, right? When you get what you think is going to happen, then you don't get the feeling. Then you know that the feeling and the outcome aren't connected together. So with this kind of heavy Saturn responsibility energy, there's a lot of energy towards I'm going to like bust through all my to-dos, I'm going to hit my priorities, I'm going to put myself out there, but Saturn itself, or the energy of Saturn, especially when Saturn's in Capricorn, is very much about what is this going to get? What is the outcome here? And so if you feel that energy going on in you today, you might be experiencing some kind of disappointment. And it doesn't have to be dramatic disappointment, it just has to be enough for you to feel kind of heavy. Disappointment brings insight or clarification. I think it absolutely does. Right, it helps redirect our focus, or it helps us to break apart what we thought we were getting and kind of see how the pieces go together, rather than what we naturally do, which is sort of like assume this is what it looks like. So let's think about, I mean, that's an interesting one to break apart. Why do we assume that certain outcomes come with certain feelings or results? I think it's because we see somebody having a emotional experience and we look at what's going on for them, and I think even just unconsciously we start tying the details together. That's how you get happiness. $1 million, they look happy, I want that, right? Or I think we project into a future where we're like, I know that if I had $1 million, I wouldn't have X, Y, and Z, right? I wouldn't have debt, or I wouldn't have to worry. Yeah. So control, absolutely. So we try to control the future by projecting into it. So that's just an area that I've been looking at a lot lately, because the answers that keep coming up, both intuitively and from the research I'm doing, is that the less you decide you know, the better the outcome gets. take that for a second. The less you think you know what the future is going to be. So now let's break that statement down, because I know that one was confusing a little bit. You still decide what you want, but instead of deciding you know how that feels and looks, you focus on, this is what I want. I want to be in a loving relationship, right? And now I'm not going to assume I know all the things that go into that. I'm going to leave space for the unknown. I'm going to leave space for how it happens and when it happens. There are some things you can plug in there. You could plug more in there. So what your definition of a loving relationship is, you plug in there. But how or when or who in that case, those are unknown factors, and you actually want to leave those unknown. You want to leave that in there. That opens you up. When we think we know how an outcome plays out, we create an expectation for that. And when the expectation fails, then we experience disappointment. And all that disappointment is meant to do is really just help us to clarify and clean up what our intention is, what we're asking for, what we're focusing on, to help redirect our energy, right, and raise the vibration or change the vibration. I never really hear anyone complain about the journey or feel disappointed in the journey. I always hear complaints connected or disappointment connected to outcomes. Raise your hand if that's true for you, or give me a thumbs up, I mean. Nothing is static and nothing happens the same every time, right? Variables always have to be accounted for. So let's say you're like all hyped up after listening to this, and you're like, I'm going to go do it. I'm going to go meditate, and I'm going to get into that quantum field, and I'm going to start feeling, and I'm going to bring it back. And then you're very successful, right? The energy was right, the timing was right, whatever it is, it's all there, and it plays out beautifully. And you're like, hoo-hoo, I did it. And you're like, so excited to go do it again. So you do it the next day. But things are different. Different time of day. How did you sleep last night? What did you eat today? What's on your plate to do, right? Like all these things are variables that affect it. And we, again, because we have this very set brain that has already now, it lives on that linear level and it's going into the past. This is what the brain does by default, right? It goes, yesterday this was easy and successful, so today is going to be easy and successful. Do what you did yesterday and you'll get the same result. No. No. You could get a similar result. You could get slightly better, way better, kind of okay, kind of missed it. There's so many variables, and what we need to do is, again, we have to let go of the past in order to fully access the future. So we have to be careful, because the mind does want to put an expectation that it's, that it's going to happen a certain way because you did these certain steps. It doesn't. You can be in this space where you are totally okay with the fluctuation part. You're actually going to be more successful more often by letting go of how good. God bless you. Love you too. I got a kombucha. You're going to be even better at it the next time because you've let go of the past and you have fully activated the fluctuation or the variability in the moment, which means you're more in the moment, which means you'll have better success building that future and bringing it back every time. So let me tell you my little story about how I practiced this just today. So I like to run, and I used to run a lot in the past. Loved it, was getting good at it. And then I moved back to Washington, and the terrain is different, the climate is different, just a lot of variables. There you go, right? A lot of variables kicking in. So I haven't been as into it, or I haven't been as consistent with it. And there is this hill I like to run. It's very steep, and I run down the hill every day, or not every day, but every time I run down the hill first. And then on the way back, I have to run up the hill. And depending on how many times I've done it in a week, I can kind of tell how much of it I can run and how much of it I'm going to pant. Like I'm just going to be like up the hill. And again, all of that is past to present thinking, right? I'm looking at my past experience, I'm looking at what I did before, and I'm bringing it into this moment, and I'm deciding this is my capacity based on what I know. So I was listening to the book, the Becoming Supernatural book, and he was in a deep amount of conversation. So I'm listening to the book, and it dawned on me right as I'm running back up the hill, and I'm getting it to the steepest part. Now this part, I always stop at the bottom. I have not in the past been able to run this hill, run up it, because it's so steep. And I've already been running up little hills right before it. So I'm listening to the book, and I thought, you know what, just for fun, I'm going to go fully into the quantum field. So when you go fully into the quantum field, you stop identifying with your past. You also stop identifying with your body, with your stories, with, I'm a mom, I'm a woman, I am this age, blah, blah. You'd stop. You just go into the pure being state. You stop telling yourself the story. And so I'm hitting the bottom of the hill, and I'm just not there. I'm just in the quantum field, and I'm going, and before I knew it, I'm like halfway up this steep hill running it. And if I had just let myself stay in that space, I would have ran to the top without knowing. But what happened is I checked in mentally, and I went, where am I? And I dropped in, and I saw that I was halfway up the hill, and I'm like, holy crap, I'm halfway up the hill. And immediately it couldn't do it. I was like, like all the information about me came back in. And I thought, isn't that fascinating? Isn't it fascinating that if you can disidentify from your story enough, you can do things physically that your story tells you can't? And I literally saw myself not live my story and run up a hill. And then I saw myself re-identify and not be able to do it based on my story. So that was proof right there. And that was just a little tiny segment. And I hadn't even started building the future life yet, where future me is killing it and just like zooming up that hill, because that hill is like, in my mind, nothing. So even getting partway there has success attached to it. So partway is the disidentification of your past storyline and letting go of the concept of this. And it's not that you're going to live that way forever. You're not going to walk around and be like, I am air, I am nothing, I'm just being, who's Therese? who's mom, right? You don't have to do that, but you do need to do it for a small amount of time to start creating the connection between the future that you want to see and experience and this present moment. I hope you guys have an amazing day. I hope that the energy even now has shifted you into possibility. On the final note, I guess what I would say is get more excited about the unknown. Like, add that more into your life, the unknown. Because when you have less expectation and less known variables, you move more into the quantum field. And when you're in the quanta, that's where you are moving matter. Love you so much. Thank you for watching. Subscribe now and hit the notification bell so that you know the next time I release a new video. Until then, stay magical.